Welcome to Just Asia, AHRC TV's weekly human rights program. This week's focus is Hong Kong, where the violent clashes that erupted between protesters and police have caused shock and increased the sense of uncertainty that has lingered in the wake of disappearance of 5 booksellers. Welcome to AHRC TV's Just Asia. I am Julia Reblando. The first day of the Lunar New Year witnessed violent clashes between protesters and police in Hong Kong's Mong Kok district. The violence erupted overnight as police attempted to shut down unlicensed food stalls along the junction of Shantung Road and Portland Street. The stalls were set up for the Lunar New Year holiday. Although officials usually turn a blind eye to the vendors' lack of permits, this year they decided to crack down. Police fired live warning shots into the air as demonstrators and activists set fire to rubbish bins and hurled stones and bricks at officers. Over 64 had been arrested for offenses of unlawful assembly, assaulting police, and possession of offensive weapons. While it is not known how many protesters were hurt, 44 policemen and journalists have been reported injured. Traffic resumed early Tuesday morning, but many crossroads remained blocked and fires continued blazing. This was the worst episode of visible unrest since the pro-democracy protests rocked Hong Kong in 2014. Since the pro-democracy protest trust has deteriorated between the public and the police. The rift between the people and the Hong Kong's government is also expanding. Next, Just Asia continues a discussion on the disappearance of 5 booksellers in Hong Kong. One of them, Mr. Li Bo, was abducted from Hong Kong and remains missing until today. There has been no further news of his whereabouts. Hong Kong journalists traveled to Guangdong province last week to find answers from the provincial chief, who redirected them to the chief of police, saying the chief of police was more apt to address such questions. Highly embarrassed at the media attention, the police chief was unable to explain the disappearance of Mr. Li Bo and ended the saying by, "I will find out and get back to you later." This could suggest that the Guangdong police are not responsible for Mr. Li Bo's abduction and that higher-up political authorities are involved. Hong Kong people are upset and concerned on 2 fronts. First, that someone can be so abducted and taken back to China for investigation, which is the general assumption of Mr. Li Bo's situation. Second, that this is threatening Hong Kong's freedom of speech and expression. It is believed that certain information in the banned books sold in Mr. Li Bo's bookstore have either annoyed or embarrassed leaders in China, or that the booksellers had secret information that the Chinese government did not want publicly known. Respect for the right to freedom of expression provides opportunities to solve problems with dialogue in a peaceful manner. There is concern that the Chinese government's recent crackdown on the freedom of expression may provoke people to respond with violence. Just Asia met up with Hong Kong Barrister Y.L. Cheung and Solicitor John Joseph Clancey to discuss these issues in more detail.
Right. This abduction saga of Mr. Li Bo is no doubt one of the biggest threat to this one country to system since 1997, because under the basic law, the law enforcement agents on both sides of the border cannot take any action on the other side of the border. And now this man mysteriously disappeared. And no doubt against his will. His travel permit was at home, and there was no reason why he should disappear without alerting his family. Then days after that, he informed his wife, that he was safe and well, and although he could not come back home, he was there assisting in some investigation. No more detail about that. Despite the fact that the Hong Kong police has been demanding explanation from Guangdong police, nothing comes from the Guangdong government authority other than that he is still there safe and well. So it will not make people here comfortable, because clearly he disappears against his will.
But in terms of the ongoing investigation by the Hong Kong police, the Director of Security has said they have made inquiries with Guangdong Province and perhaps with the national government, but have not received any satisfactory answer thus far. They've only been told that they cannot provide any further information.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a breakdown in the communication for whatever reason, that somebody must know something, because the wife has been told that he's assisting with investigations, and yet at the same time nobody can provide further details.
Well, the fact that people are being kept in the dark will only increase this suspicion, and in particular when this kind of lack of mutual trust has been growing. I mean, in Hong Kong, I mean, it makes us even more uncomfortable.
Yes, and I think, just to follow up a little more on what you said, Y.L, that my feeling of discussing with people, that from being people very unhappy to be very angry about how somebody could just come down to Hong Kong and kidnap, in effect, somebody and take them back to China for investigation in regards to a matter that has obviously upset somebody in China. Perhaps you could say a little bit more about the types of books that are coming out now and the materials in those books, and why some people are concerned in China, and rather than taking either a defamation action or getting an injunction to stop publication of falsehoods, they've apparently taken these people, taken Lei Bo and others back to China to find out what the sources of the information are in those books.
Well, yes, you see a natural consequence in a society where media are under a strict state control. A lot of this sort of so-called inside stories will be floating around. For many years, actually, this kind of banned books appears to be very popular in Hong Kong, although as far as I'm concerned, many of them are just trash, if I may. Not many of them do sell well, but occasionally we do have some of those banned books, really from which you can find some interesting and rather credible inside information. And perhaps that annoys the leaders in China. Now, people have been under a feeling that this disappearance of Mr. Li Bo must have something to do with some sort of secret informant, which the Chinese government would want to find out. That appears to be the only explanation we are following. But exactly what happened, that must remain to be seen.
So on the one hand, this is a threat to the one country, two systems setup that we have, in that the mainland police or authorities should not be coming to Hong Kong. On the other hand, it's a threat to the freedom of publication that we have in Hong Kong, and the freedom of expression. That even though people may say things which are not liked by others, that we do have the freedom to publish those, as long as they're not defamatory.
Well, there's added to that, there's there's a question that we are now asking. The question is, who is actually in charge? What happened last week was that the media who traveled to Guangdong trying to visit the government people there happened to find the chief of Guangdong province, and the journalist asked a question as to the whereabouts of Mr. Li Bo, and this provincial chief could not offer any explanation. And in the end, he suggested the journalists look for the deputy police chief of Guangdong, who is supposed to be in charge of the immigration department. Then hours later, the journalists found this deputy chief of the police, and again, he could not offer any explanation. But on the TV, we seem to have a feeling that he was deeply embarrassed by by this media attention on him, because obviously he really thought that he was not responsible for this matter. So he said that, oh, I could not offer you any explanation. Maybe I'll find out. I'll tell you later. But that triggered a suspicion is that maybe the police in Guangdong are not actually responsible for Mr. Li Bo's disappearance. It may come from somebody high up in the hierarchy. It's just that it's so high that they really have no control, or they cannot make them adopt a different action.
And again, just to remember that Li Bo is one of 5 persons who have been detained in regards to the publication of these books in the recent months, including one person who was Mr. Guo, who was disappeared from Thailand, and again was able to leave the country and get back to China without any travel documents.
Again, this is another matter which worries people. That is this kind of abduction of people from abroad and take them back to China appears to be becoming a pattern. Because it happened, for example, it reminds us of a few months ago when the arrested lawyer, Madam Wang Yu, whose 16-year-old son was actually abducted in Burma and was taken back to China, and now, of course, living with his grandmother. And 2 lawyers or friends of the lawyers who were accompanying the son of Madam Wang Yu were also abducted, arrested, and taken back to China. And again, they remain disappeared. So, so now we're becoming increasingly worried that this kind of abduction of people from abroad and forcibly take them back to China would become a pattern, and it seems to be tolerated by some neighboring countries such as Burma and Thailand.
There was even an explanation by one official to the effect that, well, all countries do this kind of thing, abducting people who they want to get back to their own country. So it seems to support this policy, if I might put it that way, of bringing people back for detention and questioning and otherwise dealing with them in China. But getting back to the point of the free press in Hong Kong and freedom of publication, would you agree that this is also a threat to our system of having this freedom of expression here?
This is not just a threat, it has become a reality. This abduction matter has actually claimed the first casualty. What happened was last week when I went to a bookstore, again what locally we call it a first floor bookstore known as 1908 in Tsim Sha Tsui. And I went there on Sunday, and I walked into the shop only to find that the staff were packing. They were leaving, and they sadly they told me that they were closing down. For one thing, one of the partners of the bookstore is a Beijing resident, and I'm told that he had been under tremendous pressure of continuing running this bookstore. And secondly, in recent weeks, since January, the bookstore had a difficulty recruiting part-time staff, because obviously they need part-time staff manning the bookstore. They have difficulty recruiting staff. They're all in fear. So it's not just a threat, it has become casualty.
So this is another way of the self-censorship taking place in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I was told during my conversation with them, they said that not only that they have difficulty running the bookstore, they have been finding difficulty looking for a publisher in the past 2 years, and this pressure had been growing over the past 2 years. Of course, resulting in this abduction.
That is all for the episode of Just Asia. For more on these and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.